Hello, hello. Sorry I couldn't be there with you for the dev stream, but here I am virtually to talk about damage attenuation. You guys have been asking us to look at it for a while, so here we are. Sorry if there's a little bit of construction noise, cannot be helped. So what is it? Damage attenuation is a system that we use mostly for bosses, where if they take a lot of damage in a short amount of time, they raise their defenses so they don't die as fast. What is the purpose of it? The purpose is, since we have such a big gap on how much damage you can do in Warframe, think of someone that has been playing for a long time, but doesn't have the best ribbon in the world, doesn't have max arcanes, they don't have like all the shards Tau forged on their Warframe, etc., etc. Compare that to someone that does have the best of the best, the latest incarnate, everything format to the extreme. That gap in damage is so large that if we tune bosses for the bottom group, then for the top group, whenever you go into a brand new boss that we just released, like we just released Thoraxia, for example, you go in to fight the brand new boss that we worked on, you get there, shoot her once, she's dead. Obviously, that would be pretty anticlimactic. You probably wonder, why did he spend 4 to 6 months working on this boss if he's just going to die in one shot? It probably would be pointless for us to even work on bosses at that point. So if we, instead of that, tune the damage numbers for the top group, then that bottom group is going to suffer because it's going to take a million years to kill that boss because he's going to have so much health that he's going to feel like chopping wood. So obviously, we don't want either of that. So that is the purpose of this. It allows us to balance somewhere in the bottom middle, and then basically damage attenuation takes care of making the fight last a certain amount of time for both groups. What are the issues with this? Well, there's a few. So the first one is it doesn't work really well for scaling levels. So all the numbers are tuned for the normal version. So when you fight the version in like Deep Archimedia, for example, sometimes those fights, and you probably experienced it if you're a veteran, those fights end up taking 25 minutes or something crazy. And obviously that's not fun for anyone. The other issue is that it's very confusing. There's many different variants of the system. So some are affected by fire rate, some are affected by other things. So that obviously is no good. No one understands exactly how it works, and it changes from boss to boss, so we don't like that. And the third issue is obviously for a game like ours, where it's a lot about like getting the next upgrade and getting the more powerful mod and the more powerful ribbon and blah, blah. It feels bad that once you have good gear, the boss fights don't feel that different than when you have extremely good gear. Because once you're past a certain point, the damage attenuation will kind of keep pushing back so you don't go too fast. Obviously, that doesn't feel good. So what are we changing about this? We're changing a few things. So first, no more flat numbers. So the way it works right now is essentially all of those damage attenuation thresholds are set up by flat numbers. So imagine something like, once you deal more than 10,000 damage in a second, the damage attenuation kicks in. Well, that works fine when you're like in normal, but once you're in Steel Path, 10,000 damage is kind of nothing, so that means the attenuation kicks in right away. Once you're obviously in Deep Archimedia, it means 10,000 damage, you apply, 100 times that. So it obviously is not very useful at that point. So instead of that, now it's going to be based on percentages, and that will allow it to scale much better throughout the game. So you'll never encounter now those 30-minute fights in Deep Archimedia. We're going to standardize it. Again, like I said earlier, we have many different versions. So there's like some that are affected by crit, some that are not, some that can be circumvented with fire rate, some that were made for a single boss. We have a whole bunch of different systems for this. We're going to standardize them all into one so that as a player, you have more clearer experience when you're playing against bosses, and it doesn't feel like it's all over the place depending on the boss that you fight. And it also makes it easier for us to maintain and be sure that it's working as expected because it's a single system, and as we touch it, it basically spreads throughout the game. We're lowering the attenuation. This is to address that other thing that I was saying, which is that at a certain point you feel like your upgrades no longer kind of matter for bosses because the damage attenuation kicks in too early. So right now there's some bosses where attenuation kicks in like when you have almost no gear, you immediately starts kicking in. So with these new numbers, it's much more forgiving. It takes significantly longer for those the damage attenuation to kick in. It's hard to give you like precise numbers because again, it also will scale based on the level that you're fighting. But if you're something like Deep Archimedia, you probably can have an Incarnon with Roar, and you'll have a hard time kicking into the damage attenuation. Basically, it'll be hard to break into that barrier where the damage attenuation starts to intervene. So hopefully, with that, you'll feel more the effects as you get gear and as you get stronger. You'll be able to see larger numbers against those bosses. Obviously, if we just did that, the bosses would die immediately. So overall, we're changing the effective health of those bosses since we know where you're going to fight them. So we know like if you're fighting one in Steel Path, we know the sort of gear that we can expect from you to have on Steel Path. We know what sort of gear we can expect from you in something like Deep Archimedia or a normal. So we're going to tweak the health of those bosses to deliver a similar experience to what it is today on kind of our target gear. Is going to be a similar amount of time, but that does mean that because now it's health and not attenuation, if you get better gear, you kill the boss faster. If you have lesser gear, you kill the boss slower. So now your gear actually matters more. The other thing is we're fixing it for multiplayer. Right now, the way it works is once attenuation kicks in for one player, it kicks for everyone. So with this new version, let's say you're super veteran with all the gear in the world, attenuation will kick in, but it won't affect someone that has more middle of the road gear playing with you. It'll have to apply for each person. So, yeah. So there's way too many bosses. It's a very large change. There's a lot of bosses. There's a lot of versions. You know, the normal, the Steel Path, the Deep Archimedia, the hard modes. There's many variants, and obviously there's a lot of different kind of combinations with different warframes, different weapons, and whatnot. So we're definitely expecting that once this releases, we're still gonna need to tweak it some. As you guys test it out and you play it and you give us the experience, you'll say like, "Hey, Pablo, you know this boss now is taking too long to kill," and then we'll probably nerf it. And then you'll say, "Oh, this one now just drops when I shoot it twice." We'll probably buff that one. And then basically, we're gonna need your feedback to help us figure out the things that need touching. A great example, for example, is the Tridolon. We've tried it with the best gear on live and on dev, and it feels pretty similar to us. But if you're out there and you say like, "Hey, I could do 27 runs per night before, and now I can only do 26, we'll take a look and we'll see what we can do. Anyways, I'll be back to talk about Overhaul later. I'll see you then. Adios.